What's going on, youth workers? Paul Turner here from the DiscipleProject.net. Welcome to another session of the Coach's Corner, where I answer 3 questions about youth ministry that hopefully will benefit you. But today, I'm going to focus on one question because I think it needs a little extra time. Now, listen, if you have a coaching question that you would like me to answer, leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. Also, if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. You'll get videos like this in your inbox on a regular basis. So today's question right here. What are the pros and cons of separating high school and middle school ministries? So, what is the deal with this, right? I can tell you from experience, it can be both a blessing and a headache. So I'm going to give you the cons first, okay? And then we'll end on a positive note. So the cons, I believe, of separating that, depending on the size of your group, the first is really a loss of energy or momentum, because I don't know how many, high school students you have. It's never usually an equal mix. If you're separating out middle school, you're going to, let's say you have 10 amongst your, 40 group of 40. So now you have 30 high schoolers and 10 middle schoolers. So there's a little bit of an energy loss when it comes to separating out the groups. Now that depends whether or not they're actually meeting separately from the get-go. In other words, you are creating 2 separate meetings. That's one way to go with it. And I say if you're separating the groups based on 2 separate meetings, then yes, it can be a loss of energy in the room and a loss of momentum possibly going forward. Short term, you can always build that back up. The second is complaining. First from the middle schoolers themselves, because they like to be with the big people. They're suffering from severe FOMO. They fear of missing out. What are the high schoolers doing? And I want to be in on it. And they're complaining like, well, why can't I be there? Because I'm mature enough, right? I can be in this group. And so you're going to hear some complaining. And so you got to work through that. The other part of it is that the parents will complain. But my little Susie or my little Johnny, they're mature enough to be in the high school group, or they need to be with their brother, or they need to be with their sister. And so when you're considering that, considering how many siblings you have, which, by the way, the older sibling will probably be glad to be over here and have the younger over here. So just so you know. But yeah, you got to prepare for the, the negativity of that. And what I would do is write down a bunch of the negatives you would hear from your group, and then have answers for those of why you're able to work through that. The third is staffing and training. So if you say I'm going to just if you're doing it from, and really whether you're doing it for the separating, if you're doing it as a complete package of separating total, you're still going to have the same issue as if you were to separate for teaching time, which is also an option, right? Do I just separate my whole groups completely? Or do I separate just for the teaching time? And either way, you're still going to deal with staffing and training. Now, you can train all together, but you're training in 2 different things. You're training a group to work with your middle school students, and you're training a group to work with your high school students. So the training, you're going to have to double up on your training. It's a con in the sense of that it becomes more time that you have to spend being very specific to your training. But it's also a time issue when you're recruiting. So now you're recruiting now for a middle school retreat and a high school retreat. Are you doing 2 separate calendars? When you're talking about separation, I think you have to define what that separation is actually going to mean for your group. Separating completely, or am I separating just for the teaching time? Either way, you have to deal with staffing issue, because then you have to multiply that. If it's just for teaching time, you don't have to maybe have as many roles. But if it's for a complete split, then you're talking about games, worship, all that stuff. So you have to work through that. And the fourth one is space. Where are you going to put them? Is the room big enough? Is the room conducive enough? Is it possible that you can send the group teaching time or full blown? Do you have the space to be able to produce a separate meeting at the level and scale at which you are having? And that can become an issue as well. So consider the space that you need to be able to separate the groups. All right, now let me give you the 4 pros I see in separating. Number 1, each group can see where it needs to grow. Each group has its own needs. Each group has its own ability. So you know where middle school students are in their ability to grow, and you know where your high school is able to grow. You know who your fiery people are in your middle school and your fiery people in your high school, and you can see the potential then for each group to grow on its own, or you see that a lot of what brought the energy in may be just in high school or maybe just in middle school. And so then you have to adjust from there. So you have to allow each group then to grow separately, even during the teaching time, maybe, where you see them then in their real environment. Who are they amongst, where can they grow in the middle school and where can they grow in the high school? And you kind of see a real picture of that. Number two, discipline issues. Discipline issues will become a little bit less because it becomes a little more controllable. You can be able to handle, 10 middle schoolers by themselves, maybe, when they're not amongst the high schoolers, right? And you can contain whatever discipline problem needs to happen in high school without the middle schoolers being in there. So discipline becomes a far better deal there because you can really focus and concentrate on certain kids who absolutely need your attention because they are either squirmy or because they're getting picked on by somebody in the older group. So you can deal with discipline issues in a better way and be more focused and concentrated on helping students be able to overcome those things. The third is identity. Now, identity is if you're separating permanently and saying, I want to separate middle school and high school, you can create those two identities. So you're going to do a separate middle school camp or a separate middle school retreat. And you're building those separate identities to be able to grow within itself. That when you go through a middle school program, 2 years or 3 years before you get into high school, you can then cover the issues that maybe middle schoolers need to know before they get into high school. And so you're creating this identity among them where they, almost like in grade school, right, where they grow together in grades, that when they all go into the high school, they all go together, and you already are able to, they already kind of know who they are when they get there, and you know who they are, and you're able to then pass them off to whoever's doing your high school group. And the fourth and final pro, I would say, is targeted teaching. Targeted teaching is, listen, I think we can all both agree, that teaching sex in a middle school context and teaching sex in a high school context are very different and should be. And so when you're able to do targeted teaching, both on topics, but also on degrees of whatever that topic is. So if you want to talk about, salvation, which is kind of across the board, but if you never have to dumb it down, but sometimes you have to simplify it for middle school and maybe upgrade it a little bit for high school. So you can find the right level of teaching that you need to have for a particular topic or issue that you want to talk about to a specific group. So those are my pros and cons. I would love to hear from you. If you have separated your group, whether it be for teaching time or whether it be a complete, I would love to hear what you experienced as maybe a pro or a con that I may have missed. So leave me a comment down below. And I want to thank you guys for your attention today. Be sure to know this, that if you are in need of coaching, I've been coaching youth workers for the past 10 years, and I would love to coach you. That if you would love to go a little bit deeper, if you'd like to perform better, if you would like to become a better youth worker, I would love to help you accomplish that. I can tell you this, you will get accountability, and I will be your biggest fan. So if you're looking for something like that in a much more deep dive kind of way to these kinds of questions, I would love to help you. So that's it for today, guys. Appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in the next video.